Seems like the season is slipping away from the Clippers. But I do believe they have time to get things back on track. But at this point, it seems like a miracle needs to happen for them to do so. Let's talk about it. We all see that the Clippers are shorthanded on coaches, players, and all the above. Right now, the Clippers are just a depleted team in regards to injuries, COVID, everything that can hurt a team's chances of winning, keeping their season alive, and taking it into the playoffs with confidence and making a run for a championship. And I'm not saying the Clippers don't have an opportunity to do so still, because they're going to get their players back. They're going to get Ty Lue and the rest of the coaching staff back on track the way they're supposed to. Everybody's going to come back the way they're supposed to. But in situations like this, right now, the Clippers are looking at the 8th seed. And the 8th seed is a seed that you really don't want to be in. You want to talk about danger zone. That's definitely danger zone for them, because honestly, they're like 2 games ahead of the 9th seed of being out of the playoff picture. And that's just not some place that the Clippers envisioned themselves being before the season started. And actually right now, that's where they are, and that's who they are. They're an 8th seeded team. You are what your record is. And unfortunately, that's what it is for the Clippers. And it's only that way because of injuries. But, excuses and injuries and all that, or should I say injuries are a part of the game. And if a team is injured and they're not playing their capability, most people will look at that as an excuse. But to me, the Clippers have a damn good excuse in regards to where they are, because if they were healthy, only if they were healthy, I don't believe they would be in this predicament, and neither do anybody else, honestly, because if they had Kawhi and PG, first of all, they wouldn't be no 8th seed. We all know they would be a top 2, top 3 seed, top 4 seed at best in the West, especially this year. Because when you look at this season in its entirety, I don't think nobody in the West scares the Clippers. I don't think nobody in the West really can contend with them if the Clippers are healthy. And if the Clippers are healthy, I don't think no team in the West are deeper than the Clippers. The Clippers have a bench that can go out there and put up massive points. And other teams that I see, even from the lower seeded teams to the higher seeded teams, you could look at a team like, the Suns, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Nuggets, Portland. Don't matter who you want to point out to in the West. No team in the West has a deeper bench to me, or a better bench than what the Clippers have. And no team in the West has 2 better superstars than what the Clippers have. Honestly, Kawhi and PG matches up well with any superstars in the West, any superstars pretty much in the NBA. Now, of course, you can exclude a team like Brooklyn, because they got 3 superstars, and Kyrie just puts them over the top and makes them damn near unbeatable. But at the same time, they can be beat, because if you have defense, you can alter what they're doing. And the Clippers definitely have defense when they decide to actually lock in and play defense. They have great perimeter defenders too. So a lot of teams will not be able to contend with the Clippers if they play them in a 7-game series, because when the Clippers decide to play defense along with their offense of their 2 firepower weapons in Kawhi and PG, and along with their bench that plays really well a lot of times behind them, well, the Clippers would definitely be a tough team, and they definitely wouldn't be an 8th seed. But right now, the Clippers are in the 8th seed, and right now, I definitely say it's danger zone, because you don't want to go on a 4 or 5 game losing streak, or let's say hypothetically, you don't want to play the next 10 games and go 3-7, and now you find yourself in like the 10th seed or something like that, and now you're trying to fight and climb your way back up when it's very, very hard to do so. Because one thing a lot of people may not realize, when you're an 8th seed, no matter what point of the season you're in, the beginning, middle, or end, you're definitely fighting every day to keep that 8th seed or exceed higher, because you know where you are, and you know you are what your record is, and you're trying to ascend. You have to do everything you can to get there, but it's very hard to do so when you're missing coaches, players, superstar players, and the continuity and the chemistry that you would have if everybody was there playing how they're supposed to. It's very hard to do those things. I mean, honestly, the Clippers pull off the biggest upset of the newest of the new year against the Nets the other night, who the way Kevin Durant explained it, they basically had like a mental breakdown where they just didn't play the way they're supposed to or something like that. But a win is a win for the Clippers. They take it no matter how it comes. But this is my point. They got one of the biggest wins the other night against the Nets, but then they follow up with a huge demoralizing loss against a team like the Timberwolves, who I think they can beat without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George as well, especially if they could beat a team like Brooklyn with Kevin Durant and James Harden going off the way they did. I definitely think those players are better than a Anthony Edwards or Karl Anthony Towns or whoever else is on the Minnesota Timberwolves. But this is what I'm saying. It's been an up and down season for the Clippers anyway. They started out, they had a 7-game winning streak. They went like 5-6 their next 11 games. Then they had injuries, trying to implement Serge Ibaka back. Then they had injuries with Paul George. Kawhi Leonard never played this season so far. Ty Lue is just trying to string guys together and pull their strings the right way to get them to play the right way as best as possible. And they've won some huge games without, Kawhi and PG. But how long can they do that? How consistent can they do that? That's very hard to do when your schedule is getting tougher, when you have to play against teams that have more the teams that have more superstardom than you have, and which makes the competition harder for you to actually compete against those teams because you don't have what they have on the other end of the floor. I mean, if you look at the top teams in the NBA, the Bulls, the Nets, teams like that, the Warriors, the Clippers don't match up to them teams right now because they don't have their firepower, of course, but they definitely will give a fight and will go out there and play as hard as they can, but it's just really not good enough against those teams because you really just don't have enough to beat those type teams as of yet until you get all your superstars back. And hopefully the Clippers definitely get those players back soon. Definitely everybody, the coaches, everybody needs to be there because honestly, this is a point in time where the Clippers really need to try to find ways to get some wins. They got to play tomorrow against the Phoenix Suns. Hopefully, maybe they can, eke out a big win there, make the game ugly. Don't try to go back and forth up and, down the court with them because you don't have more firepower than them right now. And at the same time, you have to try to make the game as ugly as possible defensively and just on both ends of the floor because you have to try to stay afloat and try to get as many wins as you can because honestly, the schedule is definitely getting tougher. And honestly, the Clippers are going to have to find a way to muster up some wins because I don't think if they lose, let's hypothetically say 3-7 in the next 10 games, that might put them in the 10th seed, between the 10th seed and the 12th seed. And honestly, when you're fighting an uphill battle like that, trying to come back and win every game is very, very difficult because think about it like this. If the Clippers go to the 10th seed and let's say the 10th seed is 5 games behind the 8th seed, well, what if the team in the 8th seed goes on a winning streak and keep going with their momentum? Now you're fighting an uphill battle because the team that's in the 8th seed is going on a winning streak and you're just trying to battle to get close to the 8th seed just to contend for it. And a lot of times when teams get down that far, they never really recover, even though, the Clippers definitely have Kawhi and PG, those type players that can help you win a lot of games. But I mean, they're not going to win out every single game when both of them come back. They're going to have some losses in between there, even with both of them on the floor. I mean, if that's the case, look at last year. They was the 5th seed, could have been the 4th seed, but they didn't have the best record in the NBA. They lost some games, even with both of those players on the floor. So you can't expect both of those players to come back and just win out the rest of the season, go on like a 15, 20 game winning streak or something like that, because it's just not logical. It can happen, but more like those things are looked at as miracles and, a good stretch of basketball team is playing, but you can't expect that because you have guys coming off an injury and everybody has to get back healthy and everybody has to get back on the same page. And you have to understand too that when players get injured, a lot of times when they come back, they got to find their rhythm. They got to find their rhythm themselves. And all the time you've been out, you're not building chemistry. And you got to understand the Clippers are a very young team. They have the veteran players that they have there, but they have a lot of young players that they rely on. Luke Kennard and Terrence Mann and Brandon Boston and Isaiah Hardenstein and, Jay Scrub and, Amir Coffey and all these players that they have a lot of young talent that they rely on. So when you look at this team, you got to build chemistry with them guys for them to be on the same page, for you to make a run, for you to do good things and possibly get to the playoffs and put yourselves in good position. They have to do those things. But if the core players aren't there, if they're in and out the lineup, and even when they do come back, you're still not going to have chemistry with those players because you haven't played with them that much. You haven't learned their game. They haven't learned your game that much, or they haven't earned your respect as much. Things like that, little things like that go a long way in a locker room and how good a team becomes, or how good they can, become in the long run going into a playoffs trying to make a run, because those little things like that always seem to help a team build chemistry in the right way. And see, if you look at this situation, everybody's waiting for Kawhi Leonard to come back, mainly because he's been out the longest and he is the star player of the team. But has he played with Brandon Boston? Has he really played with Jay Scrub? Has he really played, has he played with Hardenstein? Has he played with Eric Bledsoe? You see what I'm talking about? The chemistry is not there. So there's going to be some nights, even when Kawhi and PG comes back, they're going to be off and they might lose a few games here and there, but you can't afford to lose a few games here and there. If hypothetically the Clippers fall to like the 10th seed or the 12th seed, you can't afford to lose games here and there. You have to go on like a 5 or 10 game win. You have to go on like a 10 to 12 game winning streak just to kind of stay afloat when you fall so far behind like that. And this is why I say the Clippers are in a danger zone, and I hope they find ways to just get some ugly wins in here to kind of stay afloat, because even if they fall to the 9th seed, you don't want to fall to the 10th, the 12th seed and all that, because I promise you, fighting that uphill battle is going to be much harder than what you think. And even with Kawhi and PG, it's still going to be difficult, because PG should come back before Kawhi, of course, but like I said, when Kawhi comes back, he's not going to have hardly no rhythm. And even when Paul George comes back here, maybe within a month or a little bit less, he's not going to have much rhythm. So, and even before, when, Paul George was playing, even when he was in rhythm, we all know Paul George has nights where he just doesn't shoot the ball efficiently. And when you don't shoot the ball efficiently, now you have to hope that your other guys come through when you're the guy they're looking at to be the main guy. So that's resulted in some losses, some questionable losses for the Clippers this season. This is precisely the reason why the Clippers lost to a team like the Pelicans twice in like 1 week earlier this season. Because like I said, you have nights where certain guys are not on, and that's okay. You're going to have those. So you can't expect the team just to, go on a winning streak because they have all their players back. It just don't work that way. And if it does, that's kudos to you. That's a plus. That's additional. We praise that, but we don't look for that. Like any team that you look at, like even if you look at the Brooklyn Nets, you don't look at them as a team and say, well, when they get Kyrie back, they're going to go on a 20-game winning streak. No, that's not the narrative. If they do go on a 20-game winning streak, that's good, but that's positive. That's great for them. But more likely, it's probably not going to happen, because first of all, they didn't go on a 20-game winning streak when he was able to play home games and away games last year. They went on a decent winning streak, but I don't know if they won 20 games in a row. And this is what I'm saying. The chemistry and all that is not there with that team. So just because a team has a lot of players and a lot of talent doesn't mean you're going to go on a 10, 20-game winning streak, because chemistry is what it's all about. And honestly, the Clippers got all the talent in the world, but the chemistry is not there, because there's players on the Clippers now, as I said a few minutes ago, Kawhi Leonard's never even played with yet. Kawhi Leonard's never played with Hardenstein. He's never played with a few other players. He's never played with Eric Bledsoe. So this is what I'm saying. Like, when you ask players to come back, and all that off of injury, when they come back off injury, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to all just be better and everything's going to just, turn to be, what's rust is going to turn into gold. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that you have a better opportunity to win and put yourselves in position to not only be a playoff team, but up yourselves in the seeding so you can solidify yourself as a playoff team. So, I definitely hope that the Clippers find ways to get wins now, even though I know the schedule is going to be really, really tough. Their next few games, they got like the Suns, they got the Phoenix Suns, they got the Grizzlies, they got the Atlanta Hawks. I believe they have the Pelicans and the Pacers. Now, looking at that, if they can go 3-2 somehow out of that, that's a win-win for them. It really is. But If they go 1-4 or 0-5, would anybody be surprised? Not really, because when you're depleted as the Clippers are, that's liable to happen because you're playing teams who have what they have and their chemistry is either building or they're trying to build towards they're building towards what they're trying to do, and you're just trying to stay afloat because you're missing so many of the pieces to the puzzle of what you're trying to build a championship contender. You might fall to teams like those or some of those that you probably should beat even without Kawhi and PG, and that's just the notion and that's just the way it is. So I definitely hope within the next 5 games they find a way to get some big wins and build on top of that and just keep it going, and hopefully Ty Lue and the crew and whoever's there coaching can get them on the right track going forward, and when they come back, and hopefully Paul George can at least come back pretty quickly, because honestly if they don't get Paul George back anytime soon, because he's only supposed to be out about a month or reevaluate within a month's time, and that was like about a week ago or almost 2 weeks ago, so you hope maybe in 2 or 3 weeks he can be back. But 2 or 3 weeks from now, they could be a 10th or 12th seed, like I said, possibly. And now you're looking at an uphill battle with a guy coming off an injury. Now you're asking him to carry the team, even though his shoulder is probably not, or his elbow is probably not even 100%, but you're asking him to come back out there and do heroic things and try to carry a team, in which I believe Paul George can do that. I believe Paul George is good enough to do that, but injuries and all that slows players down. It don't help them get better or faster or anything like that. So if he's ailing the injury still and trying to come back too early, now you got to hope he don't re-injure it again or injure something else. You see, all these things play a factor when you're fighting an uphill battle. This is the reason why I said this is not the position the Clippers want to be in, but this is where they are. They're the 8th seed, and they're going to have to just find a way. And like I said, the resiliency of this team, it definitely needs to show now more than it ever has, because right now it's crunch time for them. Right now, it's almost as if the Clippers are in the playoffs, and every game counts for them. Every game is magnified times 10, because you can't go on a 5 or 4 game losing streak. You can't go on a 7 game losing streak. The Clippers can't go on any type of losing streak. They have to just find ways to win. And right now the pieces aren't there. They have a bunch of good role players, but role players are not going to beat teams with superstar players, not unless the other team just lays down or just don't take you serious the way I think the Nets didn't, and kind of just play lackadaisical, which could be a mental advantage for the Clippers, because a lot of people are looking at them right now like, oh, okay, well, they're definitely not the Clippers right now. They're definitely just a team with a bunch of jerseys on that's out there playing in an NBA uniform, but they're not at their best because they don't have their best players, and they got a lot of COVID issues, and even their coaches are not even there. So when you look at a team like that that's that depleted, sometimes the mental advantage goes to a team like that because the opposing team just doesn't take them serious. So hopefully that's the case, and hopefully the Clippers can eke out some wins here. Like I said, they're going to have to be ugly. They're not going to be great. Maybe some nights the Clippers will put up a lot of points. They'll get a lot of contribution, but it's just really a rough road for the Clippers right now. It really is. And when you look at this team, you hope that the season doesn't slip away. You hope everybody can come back. You hope when PG is reevaluated, he can get activated and come back. You hope Kawhi Leonard can come back, and you hope you hope everything transpires in time for them to make a run for a championship. Because honestly, as I said several videos ago, probably about a month ago now, the Clippers' window of winning a championship is getting smaller and smaller. Each year they don't win it. And see, this is a year where they're plagued by injuries more so than they ever have, and it's just not good. It's just not a good look for them right now in regards to, where their future is and how it's going to pan out. Because you could say a lot of things, when Kawhi come back, it's going to be this, that. When PG come back, it's going to be this way, that way. But you don't know until they come back. You don't know until they step on the floor. You don't know until they get their rhythm back. And right now, being in the 8th seed, they can't afford nobody to work their way back into getting a rhythm. They need wins. They need W's. They need to find themselves and get themselves back to like a 5th or 6th seed and kind of stay right in that area right there, because that's where they're going to operate at best. Because if they're 5th or 6th seed, if they can find a way to climb back up to that with the superstar players getting healthy, then they can, solidify a spot for themselves in the seeding, because they can maybe move up to a 5th seed or a 4th seed if everybody gets healthy in time. So you have to hope for these things. You have to hope for the best. And you have to just see how it pans out for the Clippers. But right now, things are not looking up the best for them. But I mean, there's still opportunities to go. It's still a long season, and a lot of good things could still happen. But everybody has to get healthy, and everybody has to get healthy quick, because the NBA doesn't stop for anybody. It keeps on going. So you have to go back out there, and you have to just perform as high as you can. And hopefully, the Clippers can utilize their defense, that they do have still, with some defensive players that they have on the floor still, that they can make some plays and, kind of just make the right plays and, just keep it afloat. That's the only thing the Clippers could hope for, because honestly, that's where they are. And honestly, that's all they have to rely on is each other and the resiliency and all the stuff that they've carried through up until this time. The next man mentality is going to have to stay there, and it's going to have to, be a part of their notion going forward, even more so than what it was before, because now, like I said, you're in a position where it's, make or break. You know what I'm saying? Either you make the playoffs or you break the situation, or the situation is broken because you're finding yourself out of the playoff picture trying to climb an uphill battle, which sometimes some teams just don't recover from. I do believe the Clippers can. I do believe they will if they can get healthy in time enough. I do believe, the Clippers have what it takes to go the distance, but health definitely holds a lot of teams back from getting where they feel like they should be rather than where they are. But hey, that's my take on the situation. You leave any comments in the comment section as always. Let me know what you think, and we'll engage in it. And hey, Khaliis out.